One of the most exciting tournaments of the year has just kicked off today. The World Cup 2023 is taking place in Baku, the capital of Azerbaijan. And it's going to be a great event, knockout tournament with the world's best players participating, including former world champion Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, Fabiano Caruana. All these guys are there because they are fighting for a qualification spot in the candidates tournament. And even Magnus Carlsen, of course, has the possibility to qualify again. But is he really interested in this spot, or will he be eliminated earlier on like happened in other World Cups? And I'll be here every day with coverage of the most exciting games. Today we are going to have a look at the first round game played between the youngest participant of the event, Ediz Gurel. It's a 14-year-old boy from Turkey, really talented player, and he is going to show his skills in today's game with experienced grandmaster. I mean, experienced, he's only 20 years old, Velmier Ivic, but he had a tremendous World Cup the previous time in which he eliminated top guys like Andrijkin, Vallejo and other players as well. Let's see what's happening in this game as Turkish rising star Gurel is playing with the white pieces, opens the game with one e4, and I promise you, you are going to enjoy because we have a spectacular piece sacrifice to see. So let's have a look. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, Spanish opening, and Ivic is going for the open variation with the move knight takes e4, capturing that pawn. It's not dangerous, it's all well-known theory. d4 is played, and now the main continuation is to play b5 to force the bishop to go to this b3 square. But we get to see a slightly unusual move order, but it's still well-known theory. Bishop e7, rook e1, attacking the knight on e4, and only now black plays the move b5. And this is an interesting moment. There are some interesting games played with this move. Rook takes e4, and then rather than taking the bishop first, black is going to play the move d5. This leads to some immediate crisis in the center, but it can peter out into a somewhat better type of position for white. But anyway, white here decides instead to play the move bishop to b3. So the knight is still under threat. Black goes for the move d5, and here we have the move d takes e5. So we are back at very common structures for this open variation of the Ruy Lopez, with the moves rook e1 and bishop e7 being inserted, leading to a somewhat more unusual variation, but still pretty interesting. After white's recapture, the pawn on d5 is under threat, so black goes for the move bishop e6, white played the move c3. Typical idea, so that the bishop can always come back to c2, in which it's probably more actively placed, as we will see later on. Keep an eye on this bishop, guys. You will see what it is capable of in these type of positions. Black castled here, and knight bd2. And so far we have been following quite still some older games, including a game of Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces against Shahryar Mammadiyarov in Norway Chess 2018, in which the knights were swapped, but this makes life much easier for white. Now white has the possibility of setting up a battery with queen and bishop, looking for tactical opportunities. So what black usually does is not helping white to trade off the knights, because after that it will be easier for the pieces on the queen side to join play, but instead black played here the move knight c5. So you have the possibility of taking the bishop, or even come in with your knight to d3. So you gotta watch out for these sort of moves, but white played here knight d4. I think that's an interesting move, because I should point out that if white is really fan of his bishop, plays here the move bishop c2, black has the thematical strike in the center with the move d4. Black is about to open up the position, centralize the rooks, and things are not bad at all for black. So therefore, knight d4 played. White is about to get a grip in the center, threatening, of course, to take the knight. So black decided to take here. Knight takes d4, c takes d4. And the question is, what is black going to do? He has the option to take on b3, the bishop, trading off the knight for the bishop. Should normally be quite a small achievement, but here, after knight takes b3, white has simple plan of clamping down on the c5 square with a major piece on the c file, bishop coming to e3. It's somewhat better for white. I think black is not really gonna enjoy this sort of play. So instead, the move knight d3 was played, attacking the rook. And now, of course, we are fighting for the initiative. No time to waste. Rook e3, attacking the knight. Knight takes on c1, but white is not too unhappy trading off that knight for this undeveloped bishop. The other rook joins play as well. And once again, I think white has some control over this c5 square, and in long term, there's also some problem regarding that backward pawn on the c file. Black play here the move a5, looking for counterplay to attack the bishop. And here, white play the move rook ec3. Interesting way of building up the pressure on the queen side. And how should black cope with that? Well, rook c8 is a reasonable move. There are other reasonable moves as well. But frankly speaking, I don't see an active plan. How is black able to unleash its bishops? The center is relatively closed. And I don't think that the bishop pair is really advantageous to black here. Black played the move a4, attacking the bishop. Bishop has only one square to go to, so it has to go back to c2, temporarily blocking the pressure on the c file. And once again, many possibilities here, but the move a3 was played, as black is looking for a way to generate some counterplay on that side of the board. That could be a nice source of counterplay for black, if the rook can be included into the action via the a file. But white says, okay, I'm just going to take the pawn. I don't really care. If you do take with that rook, the bishop can happily come back to the b3 square, supporting the pawn on a2. Of course, white was not interested in trading off rooks, because now with this pressure being renewed on the c file, backward pawn on c7 is vulnerable. Rook on a3 is misplaced as well. So instead of taking with the rook, black decided to take with the bishop, gaining a tempo, threatening the rook on c1. Rook goes to b1. And here we have already an interesting moment in which the pawn on b5 is under threat. If black would consider here playing the move queen d7 to protect the pawn, very strong move here is bishop to d3, attacking the pawn on b5. Now, if you do play the move c6, there could follow the move queen c2, which is a double attack, as the queen is teaming up with both the rook and the bishop, with the rook on the c file hitting the pawn on c6, with the bishop targeting the pawn on h7. White is winning a pawn in that case. Therefore, queen d7 is not a convenient way of neutralizing the pressure against the pawn on b5. If you would play the move b4 instead, then the pawn is protected, but now the bishop is out of play, is not able to get back into defense in time, and white will look for ways to start an attack against the black king. Things are very dangerous, so instead of these two logical options, black thought, I have to do something active. Played here the move c5. Also a very typical move. It's a sort of pawn sacrifice. Pawn on b5 is hanging as well. Pawn on c5 can be taken. But it's all with the aim to open up the position for the bishops. Various interesting moves, including rook b to b3. So the other rook can join the attack along the third rank as well. But in the game there followed d takes c5. I like that move as well, as you're just taking a pawn, and what has black in mind? Well, black's idea was here to play the move d4, attacking the rook. Rook doesn't have that many great squares to go to, but it goes to g3, and that is a fantastic spot. The rook is eyeing the king. And, well, things are not clear at all. Black has quite a number of options, but he played here the most logical move, bishop takes c5, recapturing the pawn on c5. Material is even, but this turns out to be the decisive mistake of the game. Can you see what white had in mind here? And Gurel is a very strong, young, gifted player. He spotted this tactic very quickly and came up with the typical sacrifice on h7. Bishop takes pawn, opening up the king side. After king takes, it's queen h5 check, king doesn't have that many squares to go to, should go back to g8 in fact. And now the key move is queen h6, attacking the pawn on g7. And of course, the queen cannot be taken because of that pin. So the only sensible way of stopping mate here is the move g6. And now you should realize that white cannot really play the move rook h3, threatening checkmate on h8, because this bishop is still preventing the rook from getting there. But because of that last move g6, now we do have another entry for our piece. The next piece is joining the attack, and the knight comes in to e4, attacking the bishop on c5. But even more relevant is that the knight is on its way to f6, which would be a devastating check. You cannot really allow it because the king can't go anywhere. Queen is taking away all the squares from the black king. Therefore, only move is bishop e7. And I assume this was all seen by both players in advance. They calculated this from afar. And I guess that Ivic thought that everything is under control because the bishop now covers the f6 square. For instance, if you would play knight f6, you can take that knight off the board and then the queen comes into defense and the game goes on. Black is probably even better now with a piece, with an extra piece, of course. So knight f6 is not possible. And if that doesn't work, what was Black thinking? Well, probably he counted on rook takes g6 as the only sensible way to keep the attack going. But after f takes g6, queen takes g6, you're lacking enough support. I mean, white can only go back and forth with the queen between g6 and h6, and that will lead to a repetition of moves. That's a draw. But the next move, that is the move which was certainly overlooked by Black, as white found a very interesting move to reintroduce the threat of knight f6. And that can only be done with the support of another piece. You gotta go here for the move rook f3, which has simple idea of coming in with a knight to f6. For instance, if Black is careless, captures the pawn on a2, it's knight f6 check, bishop takes f6, e takes f6, white renews the mating threat of queen g7 with checkmate, as the rook protects the pawn on f6. Black doesn't have the chance to take the pawn because the queen will be lost. Therefore, okay, this doesn't work, but knight f6, can it be prevented? Well, not by playing the move f6 here, because there's queen takes g6, king h8. Now, queen h5 is a very clever check because king gotta go back to the g file, and now it's rook g3, and thanks to this queen on h5, the king, the black king, has been deprived from escaping via the center. Therefore, the only playable option, well, not really playable, it's just game over here, but bishop f5 was played, and that's an important move with the idea that now the rook no longer covers the f6 square. So if you come in with your knight to f6, black is going to take twice, first with the bishop and then with the queen, and everything is fine. But here, once again, white has a brilliant tactical strike here. Can you see what white can do to give the attack a new impulse? This bishop is a very annoying piece, even threatening to take the knight on e4 probably. But we can eliminate the defender with the move rook takes f5. The logic is that now after g takes f5, there is knight f6 check. And here, since we have removed the pawn from g6, the queen supports the knight. Bishop takes f6, e takes f6, and once again, nothing can be done against the mating threat on g7, apart from queen takes f6, but then white is just a queen up, and it's going to be game over as well. That means that after rook takes f5, black cannot take the rook. Materials even again. Knight f6 is on the agenda one more time. Black played rook a6, covering the f6 square. But are you looking for the killer blow here? It is white to play. Maybe there is not even a killer blow, but you can think, okay, materials even. I can just try to introduce new threats. And Gurel played a very calm move, very nice move for a 14-year-old. He played here the move rook f3. And he says, okay, my rook stays on the board. And now, since the black light-squared bishop is no longer there, rook h3 is a serious threat. If, let's say, black plays here the move rook e8, it's going to be rook h3 and it's going to be checkmate on the next move. Nothing can be done against it. So after the move rook f3, Black resigned. Absolutely amazing performance in his debut in the World Cup. He's the youngest participant, but probably he just played the most exciting, most impressive game of the first round. I hope you like this video. If you would like to learn more about the Greek gift, definitely subscribe to the channel, as very soon I will make other videos covering this topic and a lot of other topics as well. So thanks for watching and see you soon again with more coverage of the World Cup.